One thing we learned is I should not have the option to pause these things because then it takes way too long. They're not gonna buy the battle passes. They're quitting. Everybody's hating us. Twitter's on fire. What do we do? Throw the mustache tab. Throw the mustache tab. I don't think one's gonna cut it. You can't give them more than one. Bobby Coding's gonna have my ass. Dude, if nightmare sigils can have the butcher in them, if nightmare sigils are just for leveling, put them in there, dude. I want to go into a dungeon and I want to go there and all of a sudden the floor cracks and I fall down and boom, Astros is standing there on the fucking Hellhound down in hell. Hello guys, Fancy here. Oh, welcome to Diablo 4 Dev Campfire chat viewing. I was gonna log in and play a little bit next to this and have it just running with a smaller picture, but BNet is shitting itself, so we can't do that. So it's just gonna be full on watching it together. So I said that they're gonna come on and say, what's it called? Trust us. We know what we're doing. Wait and see. It's for the health of the game. So let's see if I'm correct or not. I have heard some positive rumblings about this. I'm a bit late to it, and people are saying it's good. So I'm happily holding an L. But let's see what they have in store for us. Oh, gotta fix this fucking. I thought I found where it started. It would seem I did not. Hello. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're watching the... we can watch this. This is fine. We can watch this. They put work into this.
Because although a great evil is receding from Sanctuary, a new festering curse now spreads its corruption across the land.
They didn't put subtitles on, though.
More malignant than I could have imagined.
Dude, that is gory. Holy shit.
I have found a way to stop this plague. To rip the dark power of these monsters from their very core and turn it to our advantage in destroying them. But I cannot do this alone. My allies have fallen. My strength is dwindling. The malignant are relentless and without mercy. I need help. I need you.
Here we go. Okay. Live stream.
Hello, Diablo community. Welcome to another Diablo 4 Campfire chat. My name is Adam Fletcher. I am the Associate Director of Community here for Diablo. I'm joined here by Joe Shelley, Game Director of Diablo 4, and Mr. Joe Pipora, the Associate Game Director for Diablo 4. We have a lot to talk about today.
Dude, Joe Shelley looks fucking... He looks so sad.
Because we do want to talk about the patch that just...
And that guy looks so tired. I'm not sure if he looks just like he's about to cry or if he just looks fucking tired. They must be
this
overworked at the moment.
Which is patch 110. We've seen a ton of feedback. We've heard a lot of feedback. And so we do want to go through, a lot of the points of feedback that we've been hearing and at the same time the patch itself. The biggest thing that, to kind of like kick us off here, I think we want to, obviously acknowledge everyone's feedback in regards to reducing player power. We know it is bad. We know it is not fun. And it's something that, we ourselves know that it's not the greatest play experience for players out there. We do want to explain why we ended up doing it.
Yes, we know best.
And then, of course, we also want to talk about like what we were trying to achieve specifically with this patch and with the changes that players ended up seeing. And then separately, we do want to also talk about how we don't plan on doing a patch like this ever again. We have most definitely heard the feedback from the players on that.
Oh, but you're keeping the patch, okay?
We want to talk a little bit about our philosophy, our own internal statements that we're setting for our.
Yeah. So what I said, they're going to come out and explain why they're doing it, and it's going to be for the good of the game, for the health of the game, for whatever, all of that bullshit. I said exactly this. They're not gonna run it back, dude. I was kind of expecting, when people were saying it was positive, I was kind of expecting them to take some of it back. I think, well, I might be jumping the gun, but it seems very clear that they're not. I'm just waiting for the health of the game, man. They're gonna say exactly those words, and I'm gonna tick it off like a fucking blue check mark on Twitter.
Ourselves for future updates for the game itself. And then, of course, we do want to also talk about how we can talk better and communicate with the community better in regards to patches and updates coming to the game, and what we can do to improve on that. So I know that the first thing we do want to talk about...
Dude, he looks like he's about to cry.
Talking about, why...
that makes me a bit uncomfortable.
I do want to throw it over to Mr. Joe Pipor over here to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I know that we've talked on stream before about our intentions for Diablo 4 being a game about choice. And part of that is ensuring that the various class options feel that they've got a place in the meta experience. And that kind of goes to some of the changes we made in 1.1. Now, Adam already called out that we've heard the feedback with regard to the patch, and we know that reducing player power is never a good experience in general. And I want to talk through sort of some of the things that brought us to where we are today in terms of decisions we were making and why. So a few of the really big changes that were made as part of 1.1. First, really, I guess, to cooldown reduction. We changed the amount of CDR that players can get as part of in the affix ranges and items that are rolling for them during the experience. CDR is one of the, if not the most powerful stat in many ways in Diablo 4. And the reason for it is obvious. When you're able to get CDR to a certain point, when using certain class mechanisms, you're able to get effectively instantaneous active skills. So that can give you unlimited resource, it can give you unlimited movement speed, give you unlimited damage resist, and it begins to dwarf the effectiveness of other options when you can start trying to take these things into account.
Yes, but that is what you do in ARPGs, right? That is the point. The point is to get to a point where you're absolutely fucking broken, and then you need the content to come up and match that, right? It can be more or less large. You can be more or less broken. It can be more or less the content matching you, right? But I don't think anything came to the point where cooldowns were instantaneous. That's just fundamentally not how cooldown reduction work, unless you can get it to 100%, which you couldn't, and especially not when it's... So the way Diablo cooldown works, as far as I can tell from testing it in the game, is you have, I made my video, right? You can go watch it, but you have a 16-second cooldown. You put 10% cooldown off, it's going to take 1.6 seconds off the cooldown, then it becomes 14.4. Then you put another 10% cooldown on, then it takes off 1.4 seconds, not another 1.6. So there's diminishing returns already there to some extent, right? It's not that you're putting on 20% cooldown reduction altogether. No, you're taking 10 off and then you're taking 10 off afterwards. So it's like it's like constant halving it even. You'll never reach 0, right? But even then, there are only helmet, amulet, and offhand available. Offhand had 2 roles. You were never getting to instantaneous uses. Unlimited resources, to a certain extent, sure, but you're never getting to 0. If something had a cooldown of 1, 2, 3 seconds before you hit cooldown reduction, or before you apply cooldown reduction, then yeah, it's effectively instantaneous, kind of, because let's say if on 2 seconds, you could probably get it down to 1 second, but what fucking cooldown is 2 seconds? I don't think any cooldown is shorter than 5, 6, 7, but maybe I'm wrong. And yeah, I mean, for the health of the game, I'm still waiting. I'm still having my little bingo card. It's gonna be there. I swear it. But yeah, cooldown reduction is really powerful, but I think that argument is a bit disingenuous. And the part about unlimited resources, true, but you are sacrificing an offensive aspect, in order to get that, because that has to come from a ring. But yeah, let's see what he says.
Now, we know that blasting through content with those things is really fun. So it feels really, really painful to have to take some of those things away. And we certainly don't relish the idea. That was the original thinking for these sorts of bits. One of the reasons why we think that these builds are very prevalent at the moment is based upon like the nature of some of the endgame content we have in Diablo 4. In particular, thinking about Nightmare Dungeons especially. The reality is that Nightmare Dungeons are dramatically overtuned from where they actually need to be based upon the place they fill in, the role they fill in the game itself.
Nightmare Dungeons is too hard? They're overtuned? Dude, I was pissing through 61s. There's only 40 more levels. And I was actually just fucking AFK pissing through them. So they're nerfing player power, and then they're nerfing dungeons as well. I don't understand the point of that. Why not just keep it the same then? Because like that just seems like a huge fucking L to me. If you're gonna nerf players, but also the dungeons are out of whack, then just leave it the same. If dungeons are overtuned, but it's balanced because players are also overtuned, isn't it in line? That's weird. But like, I get it. Like, nerfing player power is two things, right? There's two things to it, and I tried to argue it in the video I made. There's power, just numbers, right? Nerfing that, it's whatever, it's fine. It can be less, or it can be less good or more bad or whatever. Like it's always not, it's not great, but it doesn't have to be a fucking end of the world. But cooldown is how you play the game. If you start fucking with that, you need to make sure it's an improvement, and this certainly isn't, and that's the problem. It's not that we're losing the power that comes from the cooldown. It is also the playstyle and what it enables, the builds and all of that shit. That's what we're losing. But yeah, let's see what he says with the Nightmare Dungeons being overtuned.
So tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons are excruciatingly difficult for most players to, most classes to be able to actually get through.
Isn't it supposed to be that? Tier 100 is supposed to be excruciatingly difficult, right? It's the highest, it's the cap. That should not be easy, should it?
And as a result, it begins to kind of winnow the opportunities and options that players have when they begin to engage with content at that tier.
That's always the case, though. When you take the hardest content, like, that's always the case. You should aim at that's always going to be the case. You're never going to have it differently. The only way you're going to have it differently if you make the content piss easy. If you have actual hard content, there will always be 2-3 things that are just the best for it, and there will be 4, 5, 6 things that cannot possibly achieve it, and then there'll be a myriad of things that can if you play really fucking well, right? You're not gonna. There's no way. That's just natural. You should aim at having everything able to clear, like, say, the broader whatever level 80 or 85 or whatever. If everything can do that, maybe 85 is too much below 100, but you get my point, right? You're not going to get it on. The only way you get everything to clear 100 if you tune it down to be piss easy, and then you're left with nothing to do.
Such that you really do require, you need to lean on very, very specific builds, very specific setups, with access to things like near instantaneous cooldowns for some skills, in an effort to actually like make it through those spaces. And that was never really the intent of that content. And we see that, right? Players are using Nightmare Dungeons as ways to kind of like level up their glyphs, ways for them to gain experience and loot as they're progressing up. It's largely like a level up system that you're progressing with once you get into world tiers 3 and 4.
But if Nightmare Dungeons is largely a leveling system, then you have you have 0 endgame then. You have one boss then. If the campaign, the side quests, the renown, the dungeons are all things to level until you get to World Tier 3, and then Nightmare Sigils is what you use to level through to World 3 and 4, and level 100 is also supposed to be a leveling difficulty, then you have no endgame. You have no game then. The game is just leveling. So I am just supposed to get to 100 and then quit? That's the game? But isn't it, shouldn't you aim to get to level 100 and then try to clear Nightmare Sigil 100, try to clear Uber Lilith? Isn't that, or have you just made a game with no end game, like an ARPG where once you hit max level, well, then you win. It's done. It's over. Go play something else or start again. I mean, that does bring a lot of context to why the game is what it is. If there's because we're saying there's no end game, and he's saying, yeah, there's no end game. You're not supposed to play after you hit level 100. You hit level 100, you're supposed to go kill Uber Lilith at best, and then you're done. There's nothing more for you then. What? That's a little bit bleak. I don't like that. Fuck. Wasn't this supposed to be good?
But they've taken on an outsized role as sort of this new end-game chase opportunity for players who are looking to really challenge themselves. And we love that we want that kind of content, and we want that experience for those players.
What? So they're not intended to do that, but they love it, and they want that type of content, but they haven't made anything they intend to be that content? Am I just being negative?
And we feel like we have done a reasonably good job of that with Uber Lilith in the game. But we don't feel that like tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons fulfill the same role at all.
So he literally just agreed that the only endgame piece of content is Uber Lilith. You sold me a $70 game, and you have only one thing, a $70 ARPG, and the only piece of endgame you have is one boss that doesn't drop you loot, that gives you a one-time reward. So essentially, I'm supposed to clear Nightmare Dungeons level 100 in order to level up to character level 100, and then go clear Uber Lilith and then quit. That's what is intended. Well, then you overtuned the Nightmare Sigils massively, I think. I don't think many people are using Nightmare Sigil level 90 plus to level, but maybe I'm off.
Just the nature of the content type doesn't actually work well as that kind of pushing opportunity.
True. So, it doesn't work well in general.
One thing we plan on doing, and we'd hope to get out as part of this release, we're going to get out very, very soon, is we're making a reduction in the difficulty of some aspects of Nightmare Dungeons to kind of retune some things. And the goal here is to say that, we think that roughly where you are with like a Nightmare Dungeon tier 70, that's kind of where we actually want the difficulty to be for a tier 100 as players are going through the.
What? A Nightmare Sigil 70 is where they want the Nightmare Sigil 100? What are you supposed to... Dude, I was absolutely pissing through Nightmare Sigil 61 and 62. As in... I wasn't even paying attention. I was just... 9 more levels of that? That can't be very... They're gonna nerf... Is that... Wasn't this supposed to be positive? Or is it... maybe... To be fair, though, he could be saying that they want Nightmare Sigil 100 to be what Nightmare Sigil 70 is now, after the nerfs. And then I was not pissing through 61, 62, I believe 63s as well. People were saying they were doing like 12s lower, so there would be 20 levels up. I guess that's... This I'm not sure about, but we'll see.
Experience. So there's still a thing to push for, but it's more reasonable. And as part of this exchange, we know that players really like kind of blasting and pushing hard for these sorts of things. They feel like big achievements. We are going to be looking at creating a new content type, a new endgame content type that's going to be more directly meant to address those sorts of players and give people more things to chase.
Thank you.
That's part of the commitment to the live services, to make sure that we're always adding new things like this for players to go and try to kind of chase after, to kind of maximize and use their builds in fun and interesting ways. So that's another really big thing.
So that's good. I'm wondering why it wasn't on release, but I'm not going to complain that it's coming. I would just say I feel like it should have been there on release. I can't believe you made a game and released the first season without having anything other than one boss for endgame. I cannot believe that is what you've done. And I feel like you just had emergency the last 2 days and you pulled this out of your ass and you're now scrambling. And hopefully that means we're going to get greater rift from Diablo 3 because that's going to be easy to implement and I love that system. So maybe yay.
Next, we made a number of changes to the to sorceress skill, like sorceress builds in general. That sort of ended up having a net impact of like really reducing their effectiveness with some of their most powerful builds at the moment.
No, you ruined it. I'm sorry, but sorcerers were completely reliant on that triple dipping from aspect of control. That was the only way they were doing any relevant damage to anything, and you removed that, and you didn't buff anything. In fact, you nerfed more things, right? So not only did you remove the thing, the very thing that was making Sorks do crazy numbers, just fixing the aspect of control, Sork would have been plummeted down. But you also nerfed what? 2 or 3 more aspects they use. They nerfed the increased scaling to the frozen on the glacial spike, which was also contributing to it going hard, and they nerfed the stun, like the damage to stun, which was also contributing to them going hard. I guess it's only 2 more then. And then on top of that, you killed CDR so that Sorks could no longer sustain the mana. So you just dumpstered them. It's not that you rained the power down; you dumpstered them. Now I will say, what I looked through the season, the Malignant Hearts today, and the Sork ones looks really fucking good. So I think Sork is actually gonna do fine in season 1 if they can survive. I'm not sure if you can find a way to survive on a Sork, but if you get the Talrasha's heart and you get the fucking you get the Tarasha heart and you get the one where dots do 130% more damage, I think you're gonna at least blow some holes in things. Also either that or the Sork specific one, the one where you fire a projectile and it fires off an extra for the mana it consumes. Like the Sork possibilities with the hearts is cracked, but if you can stay alive, that is.
And the goal at the time was to try to bring their builds back in line with one another so that we could start trying to bring everything up at once, as opposed to having these things as they are. And this actually leads to a really good conversation about the idea of balance in general. I said before that Diablo 4 is a game that is about choice, and that remains our goal. That's our guiding light.
Why does it cost me, 12 million to respec my character then, if it's a game about choice? Or because the choice has to be permanent and have weight to it? Or
we're trying to make decisions on balance and design in general. And sometimes we don't always get it quite right, and I think that we see that with some builds that are just simply not performing to the level they need to be, because
and that's okay.
The right interactions,
that's completely
kind of
fine.
Or skills that you actually really want to use.
That's fine
to get through the game.
It's okay you fuck up.
This is an example of like when we're thinking about our goals in terms of creating this balanced experience where there's lots of interesting choices for players to engage with. We cannot make balanced decisions without kind of accounting for the way that players are going to feel about those things who are playing those classes. Like if our goal is to create an ultimately balanced experience, without regard for how much fun the player's having as part of that exchange, that's ultimately that would be like a failure on our part to not kind of think about things.
But why did you nerf CDR then? If it's a failure for you to balance without thinking about the impact it'll have on fun and gameplay, then crushing CDR and thereby ruining a lot of synergy and a lot of gameplay, wouldn't you have say that's a failure? Shouldn't you be rolling that back then? Just your own argument. I might be putting words in your mouth, but that's what I understood.
So we have plans that I know that we're going to talk about a little bit later to kind of address this more clearly. But understand that we've heard this, and we have plans in the very near future to address these sorts of things. Another bit that speaks to this is the change that was made for vulnerable damage. Now, I think that there are a lot of players in the community kind of dove deep into a lot of our systems in Diablo 4 and kind of see that vulnerable damage is a really outsized role that it plays in terms of a lot of build making.
You have to have it.
To the point where it feels that you'll get to certain parts of content and creatures sort of need to be vulnerable in order for you to feel that you need to, that you can damage them. This is something that we're very aware of, and we made a reduction as part of the 1.1 build that reduced player damage in general, because most players rely on many builds, I should say, rely on vulnerable damage to deal to kind of spike in lots of different kinds of content.
Yeah.
This is something we also need to talk about. Vulnerable.
But there's no see. Here's the thing. There's no problem in you bringing down vulnerable damage because it's overperforming. The problem is it's always going to be overperforming. You're always going to need it because of where you've placed it in the whole like bucket system, right? You're not going to get 2 plus 2 is 4, yeah, and 2 times 2 is also 4, but 3 plus 3 is 6, and 3 times 3 is 9, and past that it gets worse, right? You're not going to get it down to where it's additive or where it's in line with additive. If you have it outside, you're always going to fucking need it. That's the problem. Like, either fucking cut the damage amp of it or give it some alternatives. It's not so much a problem that you nerfed vulnerable. Like, I get that people are outraged about it, but it's because you log in and just by going to bed, your character now does 3 million less damage per attack, where it was before. And let me put that into context, right? It's doing 3 million less damage per hit, per crit, I should say, and it was doing 3.9 before. So it's 75% less. Your numbers are 75% smaller by logging into a patch. That's the problem. It's not 75% smaller crits. I'm sorry. Like, and that's not only the vulnerable nerf, right? But that's the problem with the nerfs you did. Like, I don't have so much of a problem with nerfing vulnerable and nerfing crit. The problem I have with it is that you're not addressing the underlying issue, which is that those two are standalone stats that multiply rather than add. They're multiplicative rather than additive, I guess I should say. That's more, that's more appropriate, that's more correct. And you're not addressing the underlying issue here. They are always going to be oppressive until you design something to compete with them. Or you crush them to the ground so they're unusable.
Damage is far more potent right now than we actually want it to be in general across the game. I think I've talked about this before. And we need to make a number of, we need to kind of bring these things back in line. But this is a more, complicated conversation than simply just saying we can take a bonus damage to vulnerable creatures number and reduce it by 40% in terms of the amount of damage you can get accrue across different sources. And have that be the way that we solve this problem. Really, I think we all know that the ultimate problem with damage to vulnerable creatures, the fact is multiplicative stacking on top of the base vulnerable damage, which is already multiplicative on its own. Like, this is...
Oh, wait, really? It's even more multiplicative than just being outside? Maybe I've misunderstood how it works. So, vulnerable damage itself is multiplicative?
This is the reason why the stat plays such an outsized role in a lot of player builds. We're going to need to move that to an additive place, but we can't do that without making a number of other adjustments to critical strike damage, to the way that overpower damage is both calculated and dealt to creatures, and the availability of these things across various builds. There's lots of builds that rely on vulnerable, and they're balanced around the idea that the damage is also multiplicative. So a number of their balance and tuning changes will need to be made in order to be able to bring vulnerable back in line with some of the other options we have out there.
But why didn't you wait then? Why do you do it now then? Like, you have had no issues with telling us, look, we need to wait until season 2 to give you gem tab. You need to wait for season 1 for us to fix the fucking memory leak. You've had no problems with this. Why do you nerf now and then fix later? Then nerf when you fix. That's weird to me.
So this is how we're kind of thinking about these things moving forward. We want to start trying to be a little more inclusive of all of these decisions when we begin considering which of these balance adjustments we want to make. rather than being in this iterative place where we're making small adjustments to a number of different things along the way with an end goal in mind of where we actually eventually want to be. We want to be trying to consider what the experience is going to be like from moment to moment, rather from update to update and release to release.
This is so, like, what he's saying now, they want to be conscious about how it feels update to update, release to release. And you want to be conscious about it, yet I log in and I crit for 75% less. I understand. It's like you're saying these things, and either I'm misunderstanding it, or they don't mean what you think they mean. Like, the guy seems very likable, and he's doing a very good job of trying to kind of convey his thoughts, and I feel like he's just saying what they're doing and what they want to do and kind of what they're planning, but it just doesn't add up for me. Like, how can you say that you want to be conscious about the iterations from, like, how it feels gameplay from the players from patch to patch when I log in and my crits do 75% less? Am I missing something? I mean, I know it's an outlier because it's Sork, and Sork got absolutely crushed, and others won't have had it as hard, but that seems completely lunatic. Like, vulnerable item affixes got reduced by 40%. Do you not think I'm gonna notice that? I don't get it. But he did address, like I said, the problem is that it's outside and it's multiplicative. What I didn't know is that vulnerable damage is multiplicative with itself. So you have a base vulnerable damage, and the increase you get is multiplicative with the base vulnerable damage. What I didn't like is they're going to put it in where it's additive. That fucking sucks. Donkey dig, you're just going to make it boring now. If vulnerable becomes additive, like close damage or whatever, then why the fuck would you use it? Then it's just a fucking another thing you have to keep on the mob for no other benefit when you can just stand next to it.
To get things in a better spot. So while we do believe that having our season roll gives us the opportunity to kind of reset our meta and change a lot of things, that obviously has an impact on internal players, the way that they kind of perceive the characters they're still playing in that space. And it can be disruptive for players who found a particular playstyle that they're really excited about. So so I know that, Joe, you're going to talk about some of these things in a minute, so this is an awkward handoff, but I just want to make it right. It's a very awkward handoff. Okay. I'm sorry. But
dude, he looks like he's about to cry.
I want people to understand that we do hear the things that they're saying. We do plan on making changes in the near future, and just kind of thinking philosophically about how we want to address these things moving forward. And with that, I guess, Joe, would you like to share about your thinking?
Yeah, so, I think it's...
He looks like he's gonna cry, and his voice does not sound very up. I hope he's just sleep deprived, because it's been a rough couple of days. Like, I'm not doubting that these guys love what they do, and they love what they've created, and they're very proud of their work, and the entire community's been shitting on them nonstop for 2 days, I guess. And to some extent, rightfully so, but there are definitely people that go overboard and like wish all sorts of manner of things on people. But I hope he's not gonna fucking burst out. That's gonna be awkward. I'm not gonna enjoy that. I do feel sorry for him at the moment.
I think it's a great point, a great lead in here. We want, as Adam mentioned, we want to talk about, we kind of talked a little bit about how we got here.
Oh, he's struggling.
We want to talk about what we're going to do about that. I mean, I think one of the really good points you made is like, vulnerable is, for example, vulnerable is like a must-take stat, right? And it would be better if it wasn't a must-take stat.
But more of a build option.
The game will be better when that's the case.
But then either take it off as multiplicative and make it a gameplay interactor or gameplay mechanic, so that when you're vulnerable, you have an increased chance to overpower or guaranteed overpower. When they're vulnerable, you have an increased crit chance or a guaranteed crit chance. When they're vulnerable, CC lasts longer when they're vulnerable, stuff like that, right? There's no hit chance, right? But it could have been, right? Either make it so, yeah, like increased overpower chance or guaranteed overpower, increased crit chance or guaranteed crit, with however high you want to tune it, right? Like, but make it that, or add something that competes with it. Like add another. You have so many fucking conditionals. Vulnerable is just a conditional as well, right? It is just if target vulnerable, more damn, right? And it's so boring if you just put it into damage to close, damage to vulnerable, and then you're not gonna take vulnerable. If vulnerable becomes a conditional in line with too close, you're not gonna take it. So I don't know what they're gonna do with it. Like, I would really suggest you make it just a gameplay interacting thing where it empowers crits, it empowers overpower, or something along those lines. But by the sound of it, that's not where they're going.
But if along the way to getting to that, the game is less fun, then we're not fulfilling our obligation to players, right?
But it's not less fun because you've nerfed vulnerable. It's less fun because you've nerfed CDR, and it's less fun because I log in from day one or from the 17th to the 18th, and my character cannot do what I was doing because you absolutely crushed it. And it's not that I was doing hard content. I was pissing through content, and I was doing Lilith, right? So that was hard, but that's another thing, right? Some of us wanted to try and kill Lilith before the season started. It takes a crap ton of time to level to 100, and there's other things to do. I've been raiding in WoW, so I haven't been able to spend the time I want on it. And I technically had 3 days, or 2 days, I guess. 18, 19. Well, and then the 20, because I'm European, right? So I had 3 days. But you took those 3 days away from me, to just crush me completely. And I'm a season Andy, so I don't really care about it. But the game is not less fun because you've nerfed vulnerable. If anything, the game is less fun because you've nerfed CDR. And it's just weird to me that you try to nerf vulnerable down when you know it's multiplicative and you know that's the issue. Then why are you nerfing it instead of making it not multiplicative, like making it a feature for gameplay that drives gameplay, or keep it multiplicative and then keep some alternatives so it isn't mandatory, so you have different things to pick.
That's right. So I want to talk about our mission statement for the live game. I think we have yeah, perfect. So there are four parts to this. We're going to start with the first part. We want the live game to always have a wide variety of viable builds to discover, to put together, to acquire the items for, and to optimize across all 5 of our classes.
Yep.
Second point.
So, but you can still have that even if all vulnerable is oppressive, though, right? You just need to add multiple ways of making things vulnerable. The problem is some classes have one thing that is just significantly better than anything else to apply vulnerable, so you just pick that one thing. Whereas if more things were applying vulnerable a bit more consistently, then you could have more build diversity with vulnerable still being a problem. So I just don't think you're going to achieve what you want to do until you make competition for vulnerable, or you make it not what it is now.
Every season should introduce new items and powers that keep the game fresh and increase build variety.
Then you need to put in more than 2 aspects and dog shit uniques, by the way. Just saying. Because otherwise it's just going to be, or you have a very, very, very high bar to lift on the uniques the season mechanics. And you lifted them on, you didn't lift it. I mean, Sork, maybe the Wrathful is strong enough, but the Talrasha one, you're just going to play the same as you played on Eternal. Necromancer, it's just a matter of whether or not you can sustain enough, essence. So I guess maybe that's different, but I doubt it. Druid, I don't think any of them does anything. I don't see myself using any of the Druid specific ones. And Barb, what is it? It is when you spend enough, then the next one does more damage. I don't think that you need more aspects, or you need to work harder on what the seasonal things does. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm being harsh. There are some really cool hearts, and there are some really things you can do with builds based on the hearts. But it's not all of the hearts. It's not all of the classes, and I feel like a lot of the hearts are just going to be used in builds that were already used on Eternal Realm.
Moving on to the third point. The live game should also have continually evolving end game content. And that content needs to have high monster density for powerful builds to mow down. And it needs to have activities that challenge your build. And, you know, you were just talking about how while Nightmare Dungeons, I'll get to the fourth point in a second.
I mean, this is all well and good, but I haven't seen anything
Dungeons,
that will work towards it.
Are technically challenging your build. They're challenging your build in some ways that are not very fun, right?
Yeah.
Like being CC'd all the time.
Yes, that's correct. Going through 20 tiers of Nightmare Dungeons where every monster can one-shot you, and then if you get clipped by one bit of chill, you're permanently snared, right? Or not completely frozen. Like these are not things that the Nightmare Dungeons system is doing particularly well right now in terms of making challenging content.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's so important, your call out that we plan to introduce additional content that fulfills that part of the mission statement to challenge your builds.
But why wasn't it in already?
I got kind of sidetracked, but I think
I'm being
really
harsh.
important. Yeah. And of course, ultimately what we're trying to do is make the game more fun for players, right? Players are at the heart of everything that we're doing. And if the game is not more fun for players, and we're not making the game, if players can't believe that as the game evolves, it will get more fun, then...
I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a cynic here, but he says that players are at the heart of everything they do. I really, really, really struggle to see that with how much emphasis and focus you've put on the shop. Like, I'm okay with your fucking minds revolving about the cash shop, but maybe I'm being a bit of a cynical here, but we don't have enough stash tabs, and they know that, and it'll take them 10-15 minutes or a day, maybe I'm being harsh, to put in enough stash tabs, but they're not doing it because they're going to sell them to us. My assumption is that they made Hell Tides, especially the mystery chests, more challenging to get because they're going to sell the materials that comes out of them. Gold is ludicrous. The gold costs are ludicrous. 12 million to respec your character. Fucking, you try to roll what you want on a piece of gear. You roll it 5 times and it costs millions to reroll. And you only get 2 options per reroll, and there are options that are weighted, so you'll see them more often than not. And if that's not what you want, prepare to drop fucking 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 mil per roll on items. They're doing that because they're going to sell gold. I really, really struggle to take it seriously when you say stuff like that, and you then leave things such as this in the game. They are 1000% going to sell stash tabs. And they're going to 99% sell gold, and I'm 70 on the Forgotten Souls or Roses or whatever.
Then we're not accomplishing our goal.
Also, you heard it here first, right? They nerfed experience, and they nerfed power boosting. Why did they do that? Halfway through the season, towards the end of the season, you're gonna get a little bundle. You get a little starting gold, get a little starting mats for your crafting, and you can boost your character up to level 50 and start from there. Just saying. Quote me on it.
We'll see that. Right. And so the other point I want to go to here is a change that, Adam was talking about. How do we make sure that the next time we do a patch, we don't have...
Dude, he can't even look at the camera.
Happen, right? And so I want to talk about
He's really uncomfortable.
We call it a key process improvement. That's like a weird jargon term. A change that we're making.
He's really, I mean, dude, I really hope it's just sleep deprivation, but he seems like he's about to fucking burst into tears. I am uncomfortable on his behalf. I feel sorry for him.
Will help us avoid this situation. So
he can't even look at the camera, but he does have a fucking thing down there he's looking at.
And this goes, again, this is right along what you were saying here. When we make changes to increase build diversity, our goal, going back to the mission statement, is we want to have a wide variety of viable builds, right? So when we make changes that have the ultimate aim of increasing build diversity, we need to pair those changes with compelling alternatives. And that means that there are some builds that'll be overpowered, and we can't nerf those overpowered builds without providing compelling alternatives for players to pursue.
That's right. It means that things like when we identify that there are a few individual like meta builds or stats that are like really, really powerful within the given.
That's why the Werner build, Werner Druid didn't get touched, I guess.
Until we have created those other options and redesigned things around the nature of these and made sure that we've lifted up other options and brought everything in line, we're not going to move on those changes. There's going to be always situations where there are extraordinary outliers, that we're going to want. They're usually relying on like actual bugs that we need to address. But when it comes to like trying to bring things back in line with one another, we want to be able to make sure that we're doing those. When we make those decisions, we have a bevy of other options and alternatives available for players to engage with at the same time. So if players see just taking like a toy away, that we're giving them lots of other toys or lifting up other toys, to make them more viable as part of the exchange.
I like that. I have nothing negative to say about that, except I want to point out that it is fine that you give me alternatives that I can play with, but it costs me. When I re-rolled from my Firewall Sorg onto my Blizzard Sorg, it took me tens of hours of farming before I could even amass the gear, and it cost me about 40 million gold to respec my character and roll out the gear I got. 40 million gold. If you nerf my build from one day to the next, I cannot farm for those tens of hours, right? Like I think I spent a week or two farming gear, a week and a half maybe, farming gear out. Because I'm not getting stronger anymore after I hit level 100 anymore. In D3, even if I was farming, I got nothing, I'd get Paragon points, I'd get stronger. I'd be able to just swap builds even though I didn't get the power from my items. In D4, once you level 100, that's it. You're not getting any more power except from what comes from your gear. So if I'm farming dungeon level 60 on my fucking Sorg and you nerf it, it doesn't matter how many alternative you provide for me, if I do not have the items ready in my bank, which you don't provide me enough stash tabs to actually have the items ready in my bank for, to swap builds at the drop of a hat, which is essentially what this was, then I am not going to be able to farm out the gear that I need to swap builds. If I don't have the 40 million gold, I can't farm out the gold to swap the gear or swap the build either, right? And I know you're going to say it's only 12 million gold to swap your paragons and your talents and all of that. Sure, I can swap. If I have 12 million gold, I can swap all my spells, I can swap all my glyphs, I can swap all my talents, all of that shit, get the build on, and I can run around with fire damage over time while I'm playing an Ice Shard build. Sure, I'll be able to clear content, but I won't be able to clear the same level of content as I was before, assuming my build before was good, because I won't have the gear for it. So I'll have to go down in content because you nerf me day to day. That's, I don't know. That's something to keep in mind, I guess.
Yeah, and that those toys are equally exciting.
Yes.
So let's go to the second point of this here. When we make changes like this, it's important for us to make them at predictable times, and Adam's going to talk a little bit more about our communication strategy here in a bit.
So I'm okay with the predictable times, but give us some forewarning, right? The problem is it costs you, like I said, 40 million gold it cost me to change builds. 40 million gold, an hour and a half of farming. if you've announced these nerfed 2 weeks in advance, I could have had it ready in my stats tab, built up, ready to go. I could have swapped before the patch even came on.
The start of a season is an especially good time.
Because just because it's a predictable time doesn't mean it's predictable what you're gonna do. Like I can predict you're gonna buff charge bolts on sorcerer, but I can't guarantee it. So if I spec for charge bolts before, or get ready for charge bolts, and then you don't buff it, but you buff chain lightning, kind of the same stats, but you get my point, right? Like, I'm not saying don't make changes, but just be aware that you have a system with a crap ton of fucking friction in it in order to prevent players from swapping builds. So if you want to not just people log in and the character is fucking dead in the water, you need to provide some forewarning, or you need to fucking take the gold cost away for a few days.
For meta changes to happen, because there's a big refresh, everyone is rolling new characters, and there's new seasonal content, right? And changes like that will also appear in Eternal.
To be fair, now that we have season, I don't care anymore, because I'm gonna roll a new character every season. I'm not playing Eternal. My argument is for the guys playing Eternal. It doesn't matter for me as a seasonal player. I don't care. Season starts, I'm level 0. I'm level 1, I guess. Doesn't matter. But people on Eternal are going to get royally butt-fucked.
At the same time.
But I guess they'll have so much gold. But not so much gear, because you only have fucking 4 stash tabs, I guess. Maybe it's a null problem, and it was only a problem this time. I'm open to being wrong here. It was a problem this time. Maybe it won't be in the future.
And the third point here, as Joe alluded to, there are certain situations. We saw a case where we had a skill that
game-breaking damage or crashes.
In cases like that, where the damage is literally breaking the game or crashing the servers, we'll still react to those situations. But that doesn't change the first point here in terms of.
I don't think anybody is.
And I think,
I don't think anybody's complaining that you nerfed the barbs doing an undecillion damage or whatever that number was. I don't think anybody's complaining that you had, what was it, Necromancer, Blood Lances spawn so many things that it crashed the game, right? I don't think anybody's complaining about that.
One of the things that's important for to recognize and state is that ultimately ARPGs, or some people call them hack and slash.
So if you fix the bug and it goes down to be an unviable build, then you fix the bug and buff it up so that it is on par with the best builds. You should be able to do that at least. Because otherwise you're going to just leave people like, oh, well, my fun's over. Let me just... But maybe that's a wrong take. But I feel like if there's a bug causing a build to be viable, then you remove the bug and you fucking make sure that you buff the damage up for the build to still be viable.
Slash games are about power fantasy, right? And they're about us inviting players to break the game to some extent, not to crash. There are lots of ways to interpret the word break, but and find fun toys.
I really like what he said there. He's inviting us to break the game, and that, I think they need to fucking remember that. And I think that goes against nerfing CDR, for instance. I know that he's trying to reel back so he doesn't get quoted out of context. I know he said something that he feels he shouldn't have said, but I really like it because I know what he meant, and I'm not going to take it out of context, and I'm not going to take it to mean that he wants me to fucking abuse things to do something that's clearly not intended. He wants me to find things and abuse them to an extent that is just about not intended, or just not intended, just over the line.
That we've made, do crazy things with them. And we need to make sure that we aren't trying to punish players for doing that, because ultimately that's the playground we built. That's that we built a game that's like, go find crazy stuff, and we need to make sure that when players take that invitation, that we're not punishing them for that.
That's right.
Yeah, and I know when we were talking about at least the
I don't think they're going to say for the health of the game. They've made a lot of arguments that are for the health of the game, but they haven't said the line directly. I'm disappointed. I was not able to predict it good enough.
That I wanted to really highlight light on was, obviously we did this patch and we made these changes and we brought character power down, like player power down, essentially. That in itself was also supposed to be paired with these nightmare dungeon changes that where Joe was actually talking about.
They were supposed to be paired, but whoopsie, they were not. Then how about you don't push them?
Earlier, and it's something that we've learned throughout this process is, as you guys were talking about, that we have ultimate visions for something that is further down the line, and doing that all together at once during those moments, as opposed to doing them over time and whatnot, just leads to a better experience overall for players, and that's something that we most definitely will be doing as we build out future updates and patches and so forth. Of course, a key component to this is how we communicate to players, and there is been a lot of feedback in regards to, like, hey, it would have been great if we knew some of these changes were coming down the pipe, and it's a hefty amount of patch notes. We could have digested this like over a few days beforehand or a week beforehand.
Also,
so one thing we do want to commit to right now is that we do plan on going forward always providing patch notes and communicating these patch notes through streams like this, through Campfire chats or developer update live streams beforehand, well beforehand, like at least a week before the actual update hits.
That just completely removes what I was saying about the friction, because now you'll have time to prepare, right? The friction's still there and they want it in the game, but now you have time to overcome it with the character before it gets crushed. That is good. So now you won't just log in and you're fucked, unless you don't have time to play, unless you haven't paid attention. Some players will still get caught, but that is what it is. If they're giving you fair warning, then I think it's good. And the one thing I will say, though, is, like he said, it would have been nice to know that these things were coming down the line. I think, for starters, if you're planning to nerf players because you want to nerf dungeons, you don't just nerf players and then leave the dungeons, right? At the very least, say, look, we're doing this because we're going to nerf these, but we're not quite done with it. It's coming. But I would prefer if you just waited until you're ready. Just like you probably should have waited a bit with the game, so you had some end game in it, but I guess the shareholders push, yeah.
In no matter state, because I know sometimes we're still like trying to like maybe potentially squeeze in a few different things into patch notes and stuff like that up until like the last second, just on the nature of production of how we are. But I will say we do plan on sharing those no matter what to the community going forward, from here on out, through a stream or written through blog or something like that beforehand, before players can actually get into game and actually try it out on their end. So at least we can hear feedback and you guys can actually digest the information beforehand. In fact,
yeah, feedback is always good, right? I think you're gonna get better feedback after the patch is out, no matter what. But the week before really makes it so that you can digest them and you can be ready for them.
We do actually have, of course, future updates here that we do want to talk about here really quickly. But one thing that we will commit to right now is that next Friday, so exactly 1 week from now, we'll be back on a live stream, because we will start with that live stream where we will be talking about our next patch that will be coming to Diablo 4. We'll talk a little bit about some of the details here, but we'll go into more detail next Friday specifically.
Oh, so again, on Friday.
But
okay.
We will be back on here to kind of go through the whole entire patch notes with everyone beforehand, so everyone has a better expectation of what they're going to be seeing in the actual update, and they can talk to us through chat, through devs, or through social media, through Reddit, through our forums, etc. beforehand.
That's good.
Before the actual patch.
That's a win.
So we will
Big
get
win.
Times and remind everyone, of course, throughout the week that we will have another Campfire chat to talk about patch 111, since we just shipped 110, 111. But we do want to talk a little bit about
really good,
patch 111. today, just because there are some items that we are aware of that we know will be of interest to players, specifically when it comes to things that they've been asking for, and at least it gives you guys a little bit of an early preview of some stuff that's coming down the road. I think one big thing that everyone has been kind of talking about as of late from this current patch is like some of the sorcerer and barbarian items and stuff like that, and how we've obviously tuned a lot of classes down, and there's questions of
maybe
like,
the
hey,
Oculus is happening
in the future for those two.
Yeah, we're taking a long look at a lot of the sorceress and barbarian aspects that aren't being like utilized very well right now, and trying to lift a lot of those back up. So there's going to be a wide range of like legendary power and unique item improvements for these two classes in particular. We're taking a look at a lot of things, but we're really honing in specifically on sorceress first, and then also getting a lot of barbarian updates in there at the same.
Maybe I should reroll the sorcerer right now because it's gonna get buffed. Maybe I should reroll. Maybe they're taking all the downsides away. I believe sorcerer is the only one which every single fucking aspect or unique or anything has a downside to it. It's like, you do this, but you lose this, right? If all those downsides get taken away, maybe I should. Maybe. Are they gonna fix resistances as well? Maybe.
And this is for 1.1.1.
Correct.
So the very next patch and cycle.
Yeah, and we expect that patch. Obviously, if we're having a live stream now, next Friday, we expect that patch here in the next couple weeks or so. Mm-hmm. So at least you guys can get an early preview on it.
Yeah, and on that Friday, we'll be talking a lot about the specifics of all of those changes and kind of hearing what the community says.
Yep.
It feels like
in fact the Nightmare Dungeon items that we were just talking about just now, that's actually we're planning on actually rolling that out in a hotfix specifically. And that is something that we actually plan on rolling out later today. So we'll have more information on the Nightmare Dungeon changes.
Oh, Nightmare Dungeon's been nerfed today?
That we talked about earlier. That
I guess we need to look at that
later today via hotfix. Another big thing that we've talked about in patch notes, because we've toned it down, and now we're kind of and we had mentioned that to players that we did plan on bringing it back up. It is monster density in Nightmare Dungeons and Helltide. So I know that you guys had some plans and so forth related to that.
Yeah, so I mean, going back to the mission statement I mentioned earlier.
Monster density up.
A key part.
Well, that's technically a buff to them, right? That makes them more difficult.
High density areas for players to mow down, right? And
key part of ARPGs, right?
Key part, of which Diablo 4 is one.
That's true.
Pardon my grammar. And so we're going to be increasing the density in Nightmare Dungeons substantially.
Substantially, even.
We're going to be increasing the density in Helltide as well. Now,
so this is why they nerfed leveling, I guess, because they're going to put more mobs in. Okay, I guess, but I'm not sure you needed to nerf the bonus experience you get from killing things above your level, but sure. With
the Nightmare Dungeon changes across the board for Nightmare Dungeons, all Nightmare Dungeons will get more dense. The Helltide change, there are certain areas of Helltide that are extremely dense, right?
Yeah.
Like the tar pits, for example, is very dense. Areas like that probably won't get more dense. And part of what we've been doing here at the same time in terms of these density changes is making sure that we're making performance improvements, like looking at player skills that are taking a lot of time on the servers, getting those into better performance so players have better frame rates and stuff, and and fewer stalls and all these kinds of things that make the game more fun to play. And this also helps us increase the number of, like, more monsters, more players, more stuff going on. And we know that the density in Nightmare Dungeons in particular needs to go up. And so we've been working on that to make sure that we can accomplish that. So density in Helltide will go up, not uniformly. Density in Nightmare Dungeons will go up uniformly, and these will be substantial increases.
Yep. Which I know players have been talking about constantly.
Yeah.
Wanting additional density.
Yeah, that's good.
Rightly so.
And
the difference between a Nightmare Sigil and a fucking Crater Rift is so stark. There are some great areas where you can't take a step without stepping on 3 demons. There's not a single nightmare sigil where you don't have to run for 5-10 seconds without seeing anything.
And a
At
big
least of
topic
what
right
I've
now
played.
is inventory concerns. We've heard from players. I know we've talked about gems and so forth actually becoming materials in Season 2, which to help out with some inventory concerns specifically. I know you guys have information, at least in regards to stash, and what might be coming in 1.1.1.
Yes. So certainly the gem
stash.
Change is still coming in Season 2, like you said. But we need more stash help now, right? And so in 1.1.1, we're going to be adding an additional stash tab for players so they can store more aspects, more malignant hearts.
Yeah, this has been like an ongoing conversation every week inside the dev team of like, do we feel that we're ready to do this yet? Do we feel that we're ready to do this yet? Like the density conversation, the stash tab conversation, like the engineering team is working really, really hard.
The fuck do you mean? Do you feel you're ready?
Like there's more that we're doing. This is now a never-ending conversation of like what else can we do? And what else
we're getting one, I
to
guess.
The experience, but like we've definitely heard these two concerns, and we're just really happy to be able to bring them in as early as 1.1.
Guys, they're uninstalling. They're fucking quitting. They're not gonna buy the battle passes. They're quitting. Everybody's hating us. Twitter's on fire. What do we do? Throw them a stash tab. I don't think one's gonna cut it. You can't give them more than one. Bobby Coding's gonna have my ass.
That one.
Yeah. Oh, and I should mention that
fucking hell, man.
Along with the stash tab, we're making a small change to elixir stack size. We're gonna bring that up to 99.
Oh, that's nice.
So
I haven't reached that, I don't think, but that's cool, I guess.
With new starts to seasons, and if we do have these types of changes that occur within the patch that may change, whether it's the meta or...
I mean, don't get me wrong. A stash tab, one more, win. But it's like... You're going to give me 3 and I still have problems, so I'm going to be honest.
The balance of specific things. There's been questions related to respecs and how that has been
respec reduction costs
on people's their own personal economies with gold and so forth. I know we have respec changes that are also coming with the game itself. You guys probably know more specifics on the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, this really goes back. Joe was talking about our commitment to choice earlier, and it also, but I think it also goes back to when we say in the mission statement we want to have a wide variety of viable builds.
Yeah.
Great,
so let us play them.
If you can't switch between those builds, then it still feels punishing, right? So we're going to bring respec costs down by about 40%, quite a bit.
Cool. Yeah.
So instead of 12 million, it's going to be...
want to switch over to a different build and so forth,
8?
Or they do have to adjust over to another build. They get the option of actually being able to do so, or have an easier option of being able to do so.
And that'll be in 1.1.1.
And that'll be in 1.1.1 as well. So, and then I know, lastly, one big thing is, as players kind of progress through the game and the leveling curve kind of goes through, especially post 70 or so, we've been looking at the player journey and how they've been getting up to 100. I know there's some changes that you guys are looking at in terms of experience and so forth. From that.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean the short version is we want to make leveling from 50 to 100 faster by adjusting XP. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I realized when I was talking earlier about the changes we made. Obviously, we also made the change to XP gain when fighting creatures above your level, and I failed to mention this discussing it.
Yeah.
So the original intent for that was we found players basically sitting at fighting creatures 3 levels above them and never felt like they were really challenging themselves beyond that.
I always fought 10 levels above me.
That went from a 25% bonus to a 15% bonus, and we knew that density changes were coming online, so we thought about this a little bit, but. I read a lot of feedback, afterwards in particular, that just made it sound like people thought that we were just trying to make the game take longer, which wasn't actually the goal, but realized that the 25% to 15% change did constitute a nerf as a result of that. It's the thing that we're thinking about as well.
You realized that 25 was larger than 15, so reducing it to 15 was enough? not only are you reducing it by 10%, but you're also making the requirement 10 levels higher rather than 3. Yeah, I get that you know that the density changes are coming, but that shouldn't be a surprise, Pikachu. I mean, I'm harsh. I know I'm harsh. I'm really liking this. I'm really enjoying what they're doing, and I think they have a good attitude. They still have the trust us, it's for the health of the game, wait and see kind of attitude, like, because they're not saying, quote unquote, they're wrong or anything. They're just saying, look, we're making a bunch of changes, but we just didn't give you all the details yet. So it's not as much of the Blizzard attitude that I was expecting, and they're saying some things that makes me really happy, but I do have to be a little bit harsh when they're saying stuff like, well, Nightmare dungeons aren't supposed to be the end game. Well, what is supposed to be the end game then? You don't have anything else. Well, we're adding that. Why isn't it in yet? Like, and then they want to bring down the leveling time. That's a win. I should take the wins, and I should be happy that they're listening, and not criticize the way they're listening or the way they made their mistakes that they're now listening to our feedback to. I should be a good boy.
Well,
we are not trying to slow down the game.
No, and to that point, like we have a vision for how long we want the game to take for players. We realize that it's taking a little bit longer than that, than what our vision was originally for a lot of folks that are leveling up, particularly when they get to certain parts of the game, like when they're World Tiers 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So we are looking to like really to readjust the XP rates for those areas.
That was really.
We aren't looking to like have you hit this absolute brick wall when you hit like level 70 or something, right? Like there's not like these moments where you're going to feel like you just can't, or 75. Like, we don't want you to have this feeling that you just can't make meaningful progress, that we're just artificially holding you back. That's never been the vision or the goal, right? It ended up working out that it wasn't, the players weren't earning XP at the rate that we had originally expected.
So I never felt like I hit a wall. I always felt I could earn meaningful progression, but I was also clearing things 10 level above my level very early on. But it did take a metric crap ton of time, and I'm assuming the people who did it more efficiently than me were kind of getting the brick wall.
What it really came down to. So these are like, we are making changes in this regard to kind of bring this down a bit. Yeah.
And I mean, you've seen, certainly we did things like increase the XP bonus for Nightmare Dungeons a while back quite substantially.
Yeah, and Whisper Completion, Helltide chests. Yeah.
Now
you nerfed it.
Notwithstanding that, there are changes to XP related to addressing, the power leveling case, because we don't have like group up, have fun with your friends, like power leveling each other. The only case that we think is not very fun is the case where one person is standing at the entrance to the dungeon and the other person is having all the fun killing monsters.
Yeah, but look, again, that's a disingenuous argument, because that person standing at the entrance of the dungeon doesn't want to level. They want to get to level 50 and start actually playing the game. They just want to have their build online and go play the game. They want to have their build online and go start putting points into the Paragon level or Paragon system. I get what you're saying. I get that. And that is your point of view, and that's completely correct. And I get it. But it falls so short of for more this reality, in my opinion. It is, you don't power level because you have to. It's like, okay, I've leveled this character myself. I want to play. I've leveled a druid by myself. Like, let's take the Internal Realm. I leveled a Sork to level 100. Okay, I want to try a druid. I don't really want to go through the first level fucking 0 to 60 again. I want to get to the point where I actually have a build. I would just like to go into World Tier 4 and start gearing my character. I would like to skip all the things that I don't really enjoy the second time or the third time or the fourth time, whichever time I'm at where I decide that I no longer want to do it, and just go straight to what I think is fun, which is gearing the character, right? I'm not necessarily saying this is me, but That's the guy standing at the entrance is not like, oh, I'm so bored standing at the entrance. Well, I mean, maybe he is, but he's doing it for a purpose. We did this in Diablo fucking 3, yeah? It took you 15 minutes to level a character from 0 to 70 and they could begin playing. And it's like, I did that so many times for Sophie specifically. I would have started the season. Sophie would have learned about the season. He's been at work. He's been working, and he hasn't had time to level. And he wants to go in, but he doesn't want to spend the time it takes from 0 to 70. And I can use 15 minutes to just boost his ass through some fucking regular rift that might what is it, Nightmare 16 or whatever, and boom shakalaka, we can play. That's the experience you're taking away. It's not the oh, I really want to level, but I guess I shouldn't because you can be power leveled. No. Like, if you want to level, go fucking play the game, of course. But it's for the ones where, let's say I play a druid now. I play a druid, I get to level 70, I don't fucking like it. I figure out, okay, I get the build that I wanted to play, this was what I was excited to do. I put it together, and it plays like a fucking piece of shit. I'm like, this is not fun. I don't want to play this. This is not cool. But necromancers auto blow up corpses when they walk to them. I want to play that. But now it feels bad to abandon my level 70 character because I put, say, I don't know, how long does it take? What level are people now after like 24 hours? I've put like, let's just say I'm slow. So I've put like 30 hours into it. Maybe that's fast, but let's say I put 30 levels into it. I'm level 70 or something. That's probably not very fast. It feels bad that I now have to put 30 hours into a necromancer. So now I've played the game for 60 hours and I still don't have a character that's even close to being ready or finished. That's what the power leveling is for. Is for if I don't want to do that. If I want to do that, I won't be power leveled. I'll go have fun. I'll go play the game myself.
Yeah. And so, you know, when we look at the balance of the XP changes in 1.1.0, we think that additional changes need to be made to make the game faster, especially between 50 and 100.
Yeah, we want level 1 to 100 to feel like an achievement, but not like a job.
Yeah.
Right. So like we want to make some adjustments to make sure that it feels fun, very achievable, obviously within the season.
I'm so confused as to how you can want 50 to 100 to be faster, yet you nerf the experience gain you are largely receiving from level 50 to 100, because you cannot interact with the nightmare sigils until you hit world tier 3, which you do at the earliest around level 40, I believe, right? That's when you can start interacting with the nightmare sigils, and that is when you can start actually dealing with enemies that are significantly above you, unless you want to just sit and farm strongholds, which I don't want to do. But was apparently efficient before they did these changes. How can you say we want to make 50 to 100 faster, yet you nerf it by 10%, just flat, like the number alone is just 10% less experience, right? But you also make the requirement to get the max amount of experience reward 7 levels higher, and you want to make it faster. There's a massive disconnect in the logic here, and I don't understand how you make this. Even if I take you at your word and it's an oversight that you know these changes are coming and you just made this change earlier than those were coming, even if I take you at your word, I do not understand how you fail to make that connection, how you bring that change in before the other one, if your goal is to make it faster. There is just something that I cannot, it does not compute for me.
But yeah, so we are going to make some adjustments. Talking about more probably next week in terms of with more specificity.
Yeah, very soon.
Yeah, so again, we'll be back on stream next Friday to talk about all the details of the changes, including the barb and like sorcerer changes that Joe had mentioned, along with other changes that we are preparing right now for the patch itself. That patch itself is supposed to be hitting in the next couple weeks. Obviously, if we're doing the stream on Friday, it means it's coming pretty darn soon for after that stream.
I mean, dude, stop saying how soon is coming. If you don't have a date, just say we want to talk about the next patch.
We plan on doing that going forward if we ever have one of these larger patches that actually make some pretty significant changes within the game. We'll either get in front of you guys via stream, or we'll end up posting about them earlier so that you guys get a better idea of what's
the patch notes are fine. Just release them a week early. I know that we do want
to take some questions, a bunch of questions actually from.
Oh, we're taking questions now. Okay.
I know one big question that has always kind of come up has been about leaderboards and so forth within and the expectation of when those might be coming in.
Yeah, but the problem is leaderboards. They don't have anything to be on leaderboards. They don't have anything you can put on a leaderboard. There's nothing. Fastest Uber Lilith time is the only thing I could see. I guess from 0 to Uber Lilith would be a thing. But nightmare sigils? Who's cleared the highest nightmare sigil the fastest? So, are we going to take affixes into account? Which guy played with the fucking lightning storm that follows you around? You have to stand in the dome or whatever, or the big one that goes and go. Boo, boo. That looks really cool, by the way, but it's the worst one, and I'm never playing it again, so I'm not seeing it again. And who played with just? Who got the? Who played with they take 40% reduced from distant enemies, and you're a melee build, and they got what's it called? Distant attackers have a chance to slow you, but you're fucking unstoppable permanently. And what are some other ones? Like just they do increased whatever damage, and you got your main damage as the bonus. And they have all of them have the poison affix or something. Like, how are you gonna make? There's nothing you can put leaderboards on except maybe Uber Lilith kill. First to 100. That sounds like something Blizzard won't do because it inspires degenerate gaming. Unless they take time in game spent, then maybe.
I know that ideally we're aiming for season 3 for the leaderboards in itself. I don't know if you guys have any like additional information or like additional insight onto those from your end?
Yeah, so one thing that's really important to us for leaderboards in Diablo 4 is that we don't think that like tying this directly to Nightmare Dungeons or content type exactly like that is going to make a lot of sense because the variety of the nature of the system.
That's what I just said.
So we want to make a content type that kind of partners directly with leaderboards so that you can be judged in kind of like this
Greater Rift
when you're going through that experience. But that is content that we are actively in development on and are excited to try to get ready for season 3. So we're going to be making I'm sorry, the short answer to this is so we excited about our competitive feature. We are making a specific content type that goes alongside that you're judging yourself against, and we're looking for season 3 for that.
Question.
Give me your Ebo spec or whatever he's called, the ghost. And let me zone in. Let me fucking annihilate a whole fucking million of demons and then just get out. Let me go in 3 minutes of just demons exploding and I'm out.
Question from You Stupid Walrus is Uber Uniques. What's the future? They mathematically don't exist, so I don't think it's a good waste of resources of them anymore.
Sorry, I was really distracted by the walrus.
Okay.
Can you read the question again?
Uber Uniques.
Oh, right.
What's the future? They mathematically don't exist, so I don't think it's good to waste resources on them in the future.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, Uber Uniques are designed in a way that they are a huge spike of power.
Please add a way for me to realistically obtain them once I'm basically ready to be done with the game. Make them drop from Lilith. Make them drop from that Vashan, whatever. Maybe not Vashan because it's already at level 80. Make it drop from Lilith. Make it have a higher chance at the highest level of Nightmare Sigils. Let me fucking farm them, or don't put them in the game. There's no point in having them if they can't be obtained. Let me get them. I want to work towards them. I'm fine with having to work for them, but let me get them. You can keep the lottery ticket. I don't care. I'm fine with the lottery ticket existing. I'm not saying that they should only be dropping in the highest. I'm not saying that casual players shouldn't be able to get them. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying make it so that I can go target them. Make it so that I can do a piece of content and I am not unlikely to get one. I'm not saying likely. I'm saying not unlikely.
And we're receiving feedback, and we understand the feedback on some of them. But they represent a huge spike of power, and as such, are not expected to be part of builds necessarily. One of our goals underlying is we don't want players to feel that one of these are mandatory that you must find in an effort to bring your build online. From the ground up, we kind of made the decision to say it is okay if we want players to find these, but we don't want them to expect to find these. Which is a difficult place to balance in terms of drop.
What's the point? If I can't reasonably expect to get one eventually, the fuck's the point of it existing? I'm sorry, but what is the fucking point? If I'm not gonna play with it, why is it in the game? Just make it so that I'm not expecting to find it until I'm basically done, and then let me get it from Lilith. Let me get it from Nightmare, say plus 90. It has a 1% chance to drop or something. Just make it not unlikely that I get one, but let me be able to just go and get one if I put in, say, 100 hours or something stupid, right? But not the whole like not expecting to get one, I don't understand what the point of having them in the game is then. I don't understand why I shouldn't be able to expect to get one if I do XYZ. Maybe I'm being a bit here, but the fuck's the point of an item you're never gonna play with? Like, I don't get it.
Operates when you're thinking about these. Now, right now, I believe that they are exceedingly rare, and we do want them to feel very, very rare. But I suspect that as we start moving into future seasons, we do want to find more ways for players, or more opportunities for players to get chances at these.
Yes.
I imagine we'll be able to talk about that soon. But I would suggest that like the current drop rates are probably not going to be the drop rates forever. We'll probably make those a little bit more common, a little more likely to be found as time goes on.
A big topic that I'm seeing just pop up in chat and so forth. A lot of comments about crowd control. If there's any plans or ways that we're looking at addressing crowd control here in the future.
What do you mean? They already addressed
as I mentioned earlier in the stream, well, I think we both
the frozen thing, right?
We think that when you have high density of monsters on screen and you have a lot of elites, the crowd control, the tools that you have for crowd control are not, need to be better, basically. And some of that is going to be adjustments to things that feel unfair, and some of that is going to be adjustments in terms of your tools.
Please fix that when you blink on a Sork, you pull monsters to you and stun them, but they still whack you and kill you, especially the Tusk Chargers. Please fix that interaction. If they're pulled to me and stunned, they shouldn't kill me. But I don't think that's what he's talking about.
I think that we'll be able to, this is something that
the tools for crowd control. I've played a Sork, so I've had all the tools.
How we're going to address that, but we agree it's a problem in the future. Yeah.
What's up? Is you have too little crowd control? Well, I've only played a Sork. I've had crowd control all my ass for my entire playthrough, so I don't know. I'm playing a Druid now. Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything. But I didn't have anything on... I didn't have that much on Sorg either until I got the chest. I guess I don't... And I'm gonna get a heart that can make me pull things in when I have Grisly Rage up. Or whatever ultimate I pick. Huh? Maybe this is a bar problem I'm too Sork to understand.
Question from hi, I'm so bad. IK Rekote. I tried. I'm so bad with names. I'm sorry. When will loadouts be added?
Please.
Yeah, it's a feature that the UI team is very excited about, and something we've talked about a bit internally. We don't have a timeline for the idea of loadouts just yet, but it is something that we're continuing to actively talk about. When we have more information to share in terms of like when something like this could potentially be added to Diablo 4, I'm sure that we'll talk about it.
Please have you need 2 buttons to the I understand loadouts take a bit of time. You need 2 buttons to the Paragon state page. You need refund all and refund page. Or, well, I don't know. What is it called? Board? Refund all, refund board. Please, for the love of God. Also, it would be very nice if you would let us make intermediate, what is it called? Temporary. What the fuck? Temporary selections. So that I don't need to spec out and then spec in. Let me press around. Let me make a change. Like path out a change. And then let me take the points away without taking them away. Like let me mark a route and let me mark the ones I want to lose. And let me then make that swap in one go. That would be nice.
Barag0 says, what is the time frame on 111? It doesn't seem very clear. Is it before the middle of the season? How long do I need to wait for Sorcerer and Barbs to have their changes and be playable? It is much sooner than mid-season.
Sorg and Bob are fucking playable right now. You're just not gonna fucking leveling. Anything will crush it. I'm sorry, but if you're just going from fucking 0 to 100, anything will do it. I don't care. Like, it's just a matter of how long it takes. Yeah, you can just play. If you want to play a Sorg, you just fucking play. I think Sorg does plenty of damage to it. It just doesn't do damage to Lilith anymore. I think it does still plenty of damage to just clear through dungeons. Like, my firewall build was easily able of clearing things 10 levels above me without ever CCing them, even though I was pulling everything into CC. It takes a bit longer. It makes it take longer, but you can definitely do it. Like, let's not be hyperbolic about things. You can't do a Sigil 100. You can't do Lilith, probably. Maybe you can. I'm not sure. Probably, if you play really well, you probably can do Lilith, right? Maybe you definitely can do it with Lilith if you just play well. And maybe you'll run out of, maybe you'll get too many stacks, but I'm assuming you can. Then I would assume that there's a Sorg build that can kill Uber Lilith, and probably a Barb as well. But you can absolutely level.
As I said, it's only like a couple weeks away, and by a couple weeks I mean like very, very soon. Like, if we're doing a stream on Friday, I would expect it within a couple days after the stream.
We have to provide some. If we say anything too specific today, production will choke us out. So we have to be very careful about the language we use. But yes, very soon.
Only because with patches themselves, of course, there are. We're on a lot of different platforms and everything, and of course those go through certification. If a certification gets pushed back or whatnot, then we obviously need to readjust schedules, so it's hard for us to actually put
I would have assumed if they holding
until that actually
they said a week, so I would assume it would be not this Friday when they're having the live talk, but the Friday after.
Very soon. BaldB79, are there any plans for some changes for experience between, say, level 75 to 100? This is actually something that we just commented on, but the journey feels a bit dull. There are several events, but only nightmare dungeons to provide challenge. World bosses, Helltides, and Whispers are a good idea, but just too easy.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish that they would add a World Tier 5. I'm going to be honest. Like, I get that you don't want to inflate the amount of world tiers all that much, and I get that it's going to inflate the gear because there's going to have to be something in World Tier 5 for you to go there. But I just wish that they would say World Tier 1 is 1 to 10, or I guess 1 to 40 or whatever. World Tier 1 and 2 is 0 to 50, and then you have World Tier 3, that's like 40 to 60, or 40 to 65. And then you have World Tier 4, which is like 60 to 80, 85. And then you have World Tier 5, that's 80 to 100. I wish they'd just do that. But because it feels really bad that you hit World Tier 4 already at level 60, and then it's just the same. It's not just 40 levels, it's the 40 longest levels of just same.
Yeah, there's so we talked about, so I guess there's two real
And no gear upgrades after a while.
parts of this. Like, so are we making changes to the XP progression for players while they're moving through, like World Tier 4 in this case? And the answer is yes. We are going to be looking at making changes to that, and we'll talk more about that soon. And then secondly, do we feel that there are the right number of like milestones for players to engage with, enough goals to kind of like consume while you're also just leveling up, and enough content to kind of do as you're leveling up in these.
That's what Varshan's supposed to do, I guess.
The answer is no. That we know that there's more things that we need to add to the game.
Being a level 80 boss.
World Tier 4. But really, just once you get into World Tier 3 and 4, just find more opportunities and more content and new things for players to do as they're leveling up through those spaces.
What he's saying, I really just feel like could be solved. Just put in World Tier 4, give me one higher level of gear. You don't have to make them roll higher. Just give it one more stat. You don't have to make the levels it rolls higher. Just give it one more stat. And maybe that's only on a certain select things, or it, like I said, I'm gonna hit World Tier 4 around level 60. I did 64 on my Sorg and it was free. I'm aiming to do it sooner because I'm hopefully better at the game. I'm gonna be in World Tier 4 from 60 to 100. Once I hit levels 80, it's gonna be minimal upgrades from there. I've been playing World Tier 4 for so long, there's going to be so little left for me to actually get. Unless there's a unique evading me or something, there's not really going to be any point for me to stay in World Tier 4 rather than go to World Tier 5, because I'll be done with World Tier 4 already and I'll still have 20 levels. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it would be better. It's just one World Tier, 20 levels-ish, done. Next. I feel like you need, and I know what I'm saying is going to come with some more power, and I guess they are rebalancing nightmare sigils anyways, so they could just nerf them a little less, right? I think that would be the play, but I'm not a developer. I really think it would be better with just one more world tier. I'm not saying 5 more world tiers. I'm saying one for you to be in from 80 to 100.
And we do have plans for those things, and we do have thoughts on stuff we want to add in Season 2 in particular, and some things we're looking to continue to talk about moving forward.
Yeah.
I would like the game to be good now, though.
We recognize that there's more. We would like to add to that journey to kind of create more variety and more moments of challenge as well while you're progressing. And not just at 100, but all along the way.
Moments of challenge again. If you add another world tier, you add another capstone dungeon. That's a level of challenge. That's a point of challenge, right? You have one at 40 to 50. You have one at 60 to 70. You'll have one at like 80, 85. It just step. It fits. But you get that one at 60, and then there's nothing for 40 levels. And I get that a lot of people are only getting it at like 70 or 75 or whatever. But that's still 25 levels then of nothing. But I guess it's not as egregious as the one of us who hits it a bit earlier. But even if you don't reach World Tier 5 until level 90, those are still the longest levels. You're still level 90 to 100 longer than you were probably level fucking 60 to 80.
Podoc24 says, what are your plans to adjust loot drops? This I'm going to add on to his question after I read it. It feels very frustrating to grind for days without ever seeing anything close to an upgrade.
Yes.
Or finding the right aspect. Even worse, when you finally do it and it's a terrible roll.
Yes.
Slightly. I'm also going to modify that and mention target farming.
I farmed a week and a half for Lilith. I got nothing. I got 6% increase on my aspect. On one of my aspects. It rolled from 22 out of 40 up to 28. Was it 26 even only? It might have been 26. I might only have gotten 4% actually out of 40. And I farmed for a week and a half. I got nothing. 0. Silch. The only thing I got was a necklace. I spent 70 million rolling it, and it didn't roll CDR. And I couldn't afford to roll it anymore. And I completely bricked my character moving forward because I had planned to attempt Reaper Lilith, and it was the last day I could before the patch notes, which I didn't know was going to destroy, but it ended up being. And I had to stop in between to go farm sigils.
Which has also been a topic within the community. I'm not sure if you guys want to have any plans and so forth for that.
So I think there's a couple parts of this as well, right? There's the idea of I grind for a long time to get an item, and the item is done to upgrade. And particularly, when you're in World Tiers 3 and 4, where you start dealing with sacred items and ancestral items, where you're kind of dealing with this larger bucket of eye power range, this can certainly tend to be true, unless you're looking for specific kinds of affixes, you're looking for particular kinds of roles, right?
Yes.
So there's a couple things. One, we know we want to try to reduce the difficulty of like kind of comparing and looking at a number of different items all at once and trying to get a better sense of that. These are things the UI team is very passionate about, and conversations are ongoing in terms of how we want to achieve that. Things like loot filters, things like that. There's the idea of like how does the progression of itemization feel, particularly in World Tier 4, while you're leveling up there. And
Yes,
the systems
please.
team has ideas on things they would like to include. It's too early for us to say exactly to like really like lay
World
them
Tier
all out
5.
now. But there are ideas and things we want to do to kind of improve the feeling of progression through the ancestral tier.
Thank
So
you.
I feel like there's more thresholds and there's more opportunities to kind of get upgrades as you go.
I fear what that means is you're not going to be able to get the guest gear early. So instead of, it feels like it just, I fear that's going to mean that they're going to withhold the progression until the later stages. I fear that's going to mean that they're going to cap item level ranges so that you will get upgrades after level 80, but it was upgrades that you would have gotten at level 60 right now. I fear that's what it means. I hope what it means is, well, he did say within the ancestral category, so I guess it doesn't mean what I want it to mean, which is World Tier 5 and a new category gear. I guess they could also just make a higher... They could also just make the higher eye level, but I just think that is sort of messy, and it's just... It doesn't really alleviate the problem if you're able to get it from level 60 anyways, because then you're just more powerful now, as early as before, because you're just going to use those items instead.
And then lastly, there's this idea of target farming. So legendary aspects are a place I think that we can afford to do more.
Yes, please.
We know that players are looking for certain aspects. They're trying to find certain things. They're
Yes,
trying
please.
to find particularly unique items. I think is often the case, right? They want their Tempest Roar, whatever it is they're looking for. They're looking for that thing. We do have plans in season 2 right now to have more content you can try to target farm in order to find certain unique items. And I think there's
Unique,
a natural
not
extension of
aspects?
that to figure out like what's the right way for players to be able to find an easier method of getting at some of the aspects they might be looking for as they're progressing through. So that is something that the rewards and systems teams will be thinking about and hopefully we'll talk about soon on stream.
Just make the endgame content spit out legendaries and uniques just like Diablo 3 Rifts did. You have a system in place where you can imprint yellow items, so it's still going to be beneficial to get yellow items. Just make a type of content that spits out legendaries and uniques, and nobody would complain. If they were just abundant enough, I would be able to get it eventually. Just, you are going to, but they want Nightmare Sigils to be leveling, right? So putting in a system like that as an endgame activity shouldn't compete with sigils, because sigils are for leveling and this is for endgame.
Yeah, and I do want to note, like, I know we have an update here coming for 1.1.1, which we just talked about is in the next couple weeks. There are going to be other patches before season 2 and so forth,
Yes.
with additional changes and items that we just haven't noted, and I just want to clarify specifically on that. We do have more patches beyond 1.1.1 before season 2 to address a lot of feedback that we're receiving from players and a lot of opportunities for us to actually do so. Can we get some sort of matchmaking system to help with partying up with random people or group finders? I know we had talked about group finders before.
I don't care about this at all.
I know this is something that
Not even a little bit.
Has obviously received feedback about, like helping out with like the social systems and so forth within the game. It is being evaluated, I know, and the teams are looking at it. We just don't have an exact time.
It was nice in D3 for farming bounties, but there's no need for that in D4.
Are there going to be changes with ARM? Oh, sorry, I forgot that was Andy for Man was the last question. BeanPot10 says, Are there going to be changes with armor regarding survivability? Hardcore is almost unplayable on Sorcerer with one-shots from corpse bows and low innate, due to low innate armor.
Yeah, I think survivability, especially on Sorcerer, is something that the changes that Joe was talking about that we'll be talking about in more detail next week is one of the things we want to.
Dude, I might have to roll a Sork. They're getting buffed massively.
Recognize that.
Yeah, we also identified there are a few outstanding monster types and abilities that are doing that are killing players a little more frequently than we expect, and like we're looking at creatures that explode when they die, for example, claim an awful lot of lives, right? Creatures that can chill, claim an awful lot of lives, right?
Or charging creatures, we've also learned.
And charging creatures, yeah.
I've seen a lot of reports about that, and I know, and you're about to say
which I think have been nerfed like twice now. Too,
well, there's a bug fix.
I'm sorry, but the fact that people die to charging monsters is just people not paying attention. They are not punishing or hard. They're not. They're slow enough. They're telegraphed enough. I think they're fine. I'm sorry if it's wrong. I'm sorry if you guys disagree, but they're fine. They don't, generally speaking, the only thing that charges you off screen are the bloaters, the big fat boys, and they run slow enough for you to dodge before they come through you. The Tusk chargers, the charges they do are so telegraphed and so slow, and I have not experiencing them happening off screen a lot. They are fine. Corpse bows, however, they molest you from off screen. That's not good. On death effects, it's not just monsters that explode, right? But that is also just you not being attentive, paying attention, or you, being CC'd, or it's the absolute abundance of visual effects covering it up. It can also be that there's just so many on death effects, because you can have the nightmare sigils have an affix that has an undeath effect. Then you can have the mob alone have an undeath effect, and then you can have fucking you can have an elite having the fucking fire spawn out and all that. You can have too many at once, which I think is not fun. But the charging shit, that is just, I'm sorry, but that is just you, me, everybody just sucking ass. I do not think the charging is unfair at all.
On the beast charge in particular, where beast charge could deal damage, even if you interrupted the charge or the beast died.
Yes, that part is fucking that part is what I said about the blinking in and they still kill you. But it's not just a charge; they also just fucking melee you.
Oh, I see. So, well, that's a good bug fix. So, I mean, we're identifying some of these like really, really difficult affixes, really, really difficult Nightmare Dungeon affixes, or like really ones that claim lots, like a disproportionate amount of player lives as part of that. And we're looking at those all at once. It's Sorcerer survivability is absolutely an issue, and we're going to be talking about it more in the 1.1.1 conversation next week. But there's also this idea of like there's a lot of things out there that are just doing a lot of like what feels to the player in the moment pretty cheap, like unfair, like just I sort of just died, don't really see what happened.
Corpse bow from off screen. We're looking at more of
these situations and trying to figure out the right places to make adjustments.
I think the Tusk chargers and the Fat Boys charging should kill you. Maybe not the Fat Boys, but the Tusk chargers definitely. I think the Fat Boys as well. Their charges should definitely kill you. Their on-death explosion should definitely kill you. Maybe not in hardcore, but I think they should. Honestly, I'm okay with a corpse bow killing you as well, but then it needs to not be able to target you off screen.
We don't want the game to be easy. You know, we don't want you to be able to walk through every encounter, and we want the game to feel deadly at times. We want you to feel like you have an opportunity to kind of evade or deal with those situations.
And you absolutely have a chance to evade the chargers. I'm sorry, but if you die to chargers, it's your fault. Corpse bow, they can shoot you off screen. They do have a sound cue, so I guess you might argue that I suck as well. That's fair. But if I can't see that fucking bow firing at me, and it just says clink, boom, and I'm dead, I don't like that.
Regards to someone, Zeus DNA says we'll be seeing the hotfix notes before the hotfix comes out today. Yeah, we'll get the notes up. The deployment hasn't started, and it's not starting until later this afternoon. But
the bear charges are a bit unfair because the bears are really fucking quick and they do a lot of damage, and you can't always get away from them.
We'll get the notes up so that players can see it, and we'll be mentioning it so that players can actually read through them and so forth.
Right.
This is a pretty large hotfix in terms of like items that we're actually fixing and the Nightmare Dungeon stuff that we had just talked about.
Yep.
I need to see the patch, I guess.
Templar Knights asks, question, can we change the codex in such a way that we can upgrade the values with founded legendary items? This could reduce the demand to stash, avoid aspects laying around, easier adopting player tier balance changes, but we still want to find items and increase codex values.
Yeah,
that doesn't sound
we know
like
that.
That sounds like they're going to take the aspect system out of the game.
That players are carrying in their stash right now are lots and lots of aspects.
Yeah.
And we're talking about ways to address that. That's an interesting suggestion. That I think it's sort of going toward the same direction here, which is like, how can we address the case where your stash is completely full of aspects? Certainly having an extra stash tab will not hurt that problem, but I think there's more that we'd like to do in terms of the aspects.
Yeah, it's certainly something we've been discussing internally for a while. I think part of this is just how much fun is it to be able to extract an aspect from an item and be able to maintain that role? And then how much is that fun so fun that it's worth like some of the inventory pressure that comes about as a result of that? Yeah. That's a conversation we've had within the dev team. We're going to continue to talk about it, but we know that there's definitely a lot of improvements we can make to the Codex of Power, for example, to kind of like be embracing some of these other like affix extraction systems.
So what he wants is, you have the Codex of Power, and he wants that to have all of the aspects in there, and then he wants to be able to take a perfectly rolled aspect and put it into his codex for him to then have permanent access to that rolled power. That also means he doesn't have to find any legendaries anymore. That's just gonna make you scrap every legendary item you find after that, though, and I don't think they're gonna do that. Don't get me wrong, it would be fucking easy and nice, but that's one of those things where with the system they have in place, I kind of feel like there has to be some friction. When you put a perfectly rolled aspect on a piece of gear, then you're kind of committing to that piece of gear, and then it also makes it so that it's harder to get an upgrade for it, and I think that's what they want. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I do think that putting that into the Codex of Power is going to be very easy, because it's also cheaper to use the Codex of Power than it is to use the other ones. I don't think they want this. I don't think they're going to do this. I think what he asks for is way too quality of life for what they're going to do. I'm not sure if I would prefer it. I feel like it kind of at that point, I feel like you kind of just remove the whole fucking aspect system and just have the Codex of Power. I feel like almost like if you have permanent unlimited uses of max rolled items, what's the point of having aspects in the first place then? Like, maybe I'm off, but that's my thought process. At that point, I would prefer they just went to the D3 model and just upped the amount of legendaries that dropped and lowered the amount of yellow items, and we'd never use yellow item past leveling was done. I think I would rather have that than just, I finally found my yellow item. I'm going to imprint it, and then we go. I'm going to go and I'm going to imprint it with my unlimited amount of imprints. It's not perfect right now. I do think what he's suggesting is a little too powerful, maybe.
Question from DRJ16. Has the team considered how certain nerfs like weapon cooldown reduction are so much more impactful for certain classes than others?
No, you have not.
Yes, the team is definitely aware that some of these changes disproportionately affect, like, the vulnerable damage change disproportionately affecting, like Cold Sorks. We're definitely aware that.
I think the entire patch disproportionately affected Cold Sorks. Like the entire patch. Aspect of control, vulnerability nerfs, CDR nerfs.
That some of these changes disproportionately affect some classes and builds more than others. And this goes back to my earlier point about when we're going to be making changes like this moving forward, that we know we're going to have this have an overall effect of reducing certain effects down, or rather reducing certain like powers or affixes or whatever it is down to a place where we want people to use the baseline to kind of build from for other parts of the game. That when we do those things, it's going to affect these different players in different ways, and they're not going to enjoy that if we've ruined their build in order to try to weed the garden and get things in a better place. Like ultimately, we're going to be trying to do a lot more situations where if we're going to take a thing away, if we're going to update something where it's no longer going to be as valuable as part of your build, we want to provide a lot of other options as part of that. Yeah. Make sure we don't leave the build with a gaping like giant hole in it as a result of the change that we made.
The problem is you can't do that with CDR, because CDR is the only stat in the game that works the way it does. CDR is the one that has by far and away the largest implication for a build. The one that can even come close to it is attack speed. And funnily enough, for Sorc specifically, the more attack speed you have, the more CDR you need to sustain your mana. CDR is just completely unique in the sense that not only does it provide you more damage because you have your things more often, it also provides you gameplay because you have your things more often. It also provides you synergies that were not available before because now you have your things more often. CDR is unique, and you can never have a build rely on CDR, have CDR nerfed, and then they go and take close damage instead and it still works. That's just CDR special. You can nerf close damage, you can nerf vulnerable damage, you can nerf crit damage, you can nerf distant damage, close damage, cold damage, fire damage, all those. Nerf those, and I can pick up the next best thing, or whatever you buff to be the best thing, and I'll be not the same, but I'll be close. But CDR is special, resource gen is special, resource reduction is special in those cases. CDR more so than the others because of how it impacts with everything else. That's the problem.
So this is going to, again, it's going to mean that moving forward, when we're making like larger scale balance and tuning adjustments, we're going to do those a little bit more slowly as a result, in order to make sure that we're embracing all of these other like components to give a lot of options all at once when we make a change.
Yeah, it goes back to the change we had on the screen before, right? We're going to provide compelling alternatives when we make those kinds of changes.
That's a punchy way to say it.
Punchy way. Kennywa says, question, why did you guys increase the cast time on stuff like leaving dungeons? Feels like you're trying to slow down the game by making us waste time for something that might feel useless.
We can look at that. We'll continue to evaluate that change. It's a fairly small difference. I know that in an ARPG, small amounts of time can be meaningful.
It's a fairly small change. It was 3 seconds. Now it's 5. That's almost double. It's almost a double. I mean, it's 66%, right? If you're taking 3 seconds and now you're taking 5, that's a significant increase. It's not a small change.
We did add the reset dungeon button back in. It does require that you're outside the dungeon, and so there's kind of a loop there.
So it is just to make it take longer. You have to be outside of the dungeon to reset the dungeon. So they may take you 2 seconds longer to get out of the dungeon, because now you can reset the dungeon and get into the dungeon faster. So it is just to make it take longer. There's no reason.
Loki5123 asks, are you going to add more than 6 or 7 items this season? Are there plans to add more? The feeling is they feel like they would want more items per season that are actually added in.
Yeah, we've always said that we wanted to take in the feedback from the players as we kind of got these seasons out the door. So season 1, we add the 32 Malignant Hearts, which I think have been pretty cool. We're going to be looking at the balance, some of them to kind of like lift them up, make them a little more exciting in some places. But broadly,
that sounds good.
They generally are. And then we have our uniques and our legendary items that we add with the season as well. I think if we see that there's like a lot of interest in trying to get more of these, we can start trying to think about how we can inject a few more legendaries into the game with each season, or a couple more uniques potentially into the game, with each season, but we want to continue to see like kind of what the feedback looks like. This is a good example of people asking for more. So yeah, good to know.
So I know I said that if they want to make more variety and more build variety in a season, they need to add more than just what's it called, the six uniques or the 7 uniques and 6 aspects, or is it the other way around? I don't remember. They need to add more than those, and they need to add more of those or have more impactful than the 32 malignant hearts. In terms of what they added this season, if we assume that all things are interesting and potentially build defining, or well, not maybe build defining, but build like defining, what's the word? It's not defining, it's something driving. Maybe we do driving. No, because driving is also leading. What the I had the word. Their build, I don't know. They help push a build. Let's just say it like that. It's not as pretty as what I wanted to say, but I'm tired. If we assume that they added 32 hearts and 7 aspects and 6 uniques, or whichever it was, and all of these had the potential to either fuel a new build, drive a new build, create a new build, be the missing piece from what was in the game to finally make a build come to fruition and work, or maybe they take a build that is good and make it great, right? If all of those, how many is it? 45? Is it 45? If all those 45 items had the potential to do that, it would be a great season. The problem is that there's like 3 of them, 4 of them, 6 of them, 7 of them, maybe. I don't know. I don't have a number, but some of them are boring. Some of them do nothing. Like Sork's defensive is you gain all resist. You get hit by a skill and you gain resistance to that. Not all resist, sorry. You get hit by a skill and you get resistances to that element. First and foremost, right now is Sork get hits by an element, it's dead. So getting resistances after you get hit doesn't work. Secondly, resistance doesn't fucking work in the first place. So it's like, yeah, you get some of nothing. That's the problem. Another problem is one of them is an uber unique that you're never going to find. That item is not in the game. Like, that item is not in the game. It's just minus one item that you didn't put it. They announced an item, but it's not in the game, basically. And it is in the game. You're never going to fucking find it. So for all intents and purposes, you're not going to play with it. So it's not in the game, right? Like, it's not in your build. It can't be in your build. And the next is, some of them are class specific. So naturally, at least half of them is already not available to you. So we're already really drastically cutting down on it. If they released a patch with 45 build, defining, altering, amplifying aspects, uniques, seasonal things, it would be great. I think that's a lot. I think that's enough. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'd always want more, but I think that's good. The problem is when they are, your crits make thing arc lightning between them. Like, what am I going to do with that? It's just a bit of extra damage. Maybe it scales high enough to build something and I just picked a really poor one. Maybe. Some of them are defensive and you're not going to do anything with them. Some of them are defensive and you're going to do something with them. The one that suppresses damage was 20% suppresses and it makes it explode for 250% when you hit a defensive. That's a cool one. If they were all cool like that in some way or another, it would have been great. But you have the Oculus wand for Sork as their unique. Nobody's going to use it outside of memes. It's useless.
Separately from that, like, are you guys looking at potentially like reworking or redoing some things?
So that mean patch 1.1.1 is kind of in that vein of trying to like get these things into a slightly better place. And we do want to go back over our existing legendary power library and identify the ones where they can afford to be lifted up with redesigns and changing the way that some parts of them work, so they've better fulfilled the stated purpose in terms of where they're supposed to sit in builds. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for that along the way as well. It's not going to be the only way we inject like new fun in the game isn't going to just be through the season mechanic, isn't just going to be through the addition of brand new legendaries uniques, but also going back over the existing legendary powers after we see players use them a little bit more, making adjustments accordingly.
I'm going to have to level up a Sorg.
Panda Mousy and Mormra. Same question, actually. What's your plan?
I'm going to have to get a Sorg ready.
Right now, they feel like a wasted stat.
They are.
Do we have any changes to resistances that might be changing maybe sooner or later, or how's that going?
Season 2.
Resistances fall in one of those categories where if we need to make a change to the way that resistance damage is, or rather, the way that players use resistance to mitigate damage from certain sources. And it's going to be a far-reaching change when we actually go through and make this, which means we want to be able to take the time with it and do it properly. It's going to be, right now we plan to put that into Season 2 as part of a larger rework. So you can look forward to more information as we get a little bit closer to Season 2.
Shadow Mun, sorry. Can campaign bosses be added to the pool of dungeon bosses that we encounter? I feel
yes, please.
Campaign bosses are underutilized.
Yes, they're so cool.
I think there could be more opportunities to fight some of those campaign bosses in the future.
Yeah, of course you're going to make them Ubers. You should have done that already. Of course you're going to make them Ubers. But fucking putting them into a random... Dude, if Nightmare Sigils can have the Butcher in them, if Nightmare Sigils are just for leveling, put them in there, dude. I want to go into a dungeon, and I want to go there, and all of a sudden the floor cracks, and I fall down, and boom, Astros is standing there on the fucking Hellhound down in hell. Give me that. Just give me that.
I can't comment further on exactly how that will look, but I agree with that sentiment.
Sounds good. Okay.
Joe has often said this, so like we definitely want to make sure we find the right ways to bring act bosses in. Yeah.
Just Uber Lilith, Uber Astaroth, Uber Andariel, Uber Drill Boy from just before you go to hell. It's easy. But also, that is such a good idea. Please fucking let me go down a crypt and all of a sudden the floor cracks and I fall into a burning pit and Astros is standing there on his Hellhound. Imagine how cool that would be. Just, fuck.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is actually a question. Party Cannon 30. Hi there, guys. Can you... thanks for the information. My question is about crashes on PlayStation 5. Is that a known issue? We are aware of some issues on consoles, specifically Xbox, PlayStation, like that may be having crash issues and whatnot from their side. I do want to note, like I know with 1.10, there was a bug fix towards a specific memory leak that the team was trying to identify and find, and they actually did find it, and it was addressed there. There was actually an additional fix in 1.11 because I've seen a lot of questions, whether on Reddit and so forth, about PC performance and so forth, and even on like just performance in general.
PC performance, especially when you have a loading screen, is poor as fuck.
And I know
for
that
me,
the team, the
PC is very high end. It should be fine.
Actively, troubleshooting and figuring out like specific situations that players might be running into. Of course, if you have like more information on those, please post in console bugs on our forums. And give as much information as possible, because a lot of those repro steps on our side are sometimes really difficult, and it helps our teams out, helps our QA teams out to be able to see if they can actually repro the same type of issues that players are having. Do you guys plan on introducing more ways? Oh, sorry, this is Mr.
I think it might honestly be Nightmare Sigils, because I think it came in after they added the teleport. It usually happens with a lot of teleporting in and from zones.
I don't want to butcher that.
Okay.
Do you guys plan on introducing more craft / modify gear? Currently, only gold has value, and only one stack can be rolled.
More ways to craft and modify gear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes, we do want to add more options for players to kind of modify the items they're getting. What we have really in like the preseason and now the season 1 state is still very like a baseline experience in terms of item modification. We are looking at more opportunities in the future to allow players to do more with their items. So yeah, that is a plan for the future.
The Almighty Striker says, "Why does the Necrominions take? Why do they take?"
I'm just gonna, before he continues with the why does the Necrominions, what do you say? I'm going to remember that. I want a thing that I can farm, a drop item that I can use on a piece of gear, and it rolls all 4 stats in their brackets, right? Like it takes all 4 stats and it rolls them within their little brackets or whatever. I want that because I have found perfect gear with min rolls that is then useless, right? Like perfectly statted, like perfectly affixed gear with the worst rolls possible.
Ability slots. It could be easily a different button. How many of Necrominion builds have beat Uber Lilith? Lots of questions about, is there? We already answered the drop rates for uniques and so forth. That was the second part of the question. But I guess the question mostly is about Necromancer minions and ability slots. Also, I saw other questions related to companions, whether they're Druid companions with wolves or Necromancer minions, if there's any changes or plans for those to actually potentially get a little bit more tweaked up.
So, I think Druid companions has to be on your bar because it's a talented skill. Necrominions is your mastery. Every other class gets them for free, gets their mastery for free. The only way Necros get their mastery for free is if they sacrifice their minion, meaning minion builds are not viable. You need to have summon and command skeletons and golem off the 6 buttons you have available, because otherwise you're just limiting the amount of spells that they can take, and that is massively not very powerful. Very good sentence I made there.
Yeah, this is something we do care about. One of the things that that sounded dismissive.
Yeah, we care about a lot of things, but go on.
What I was just trying to get to another point, which is there's some really cool stuff in some of the Malignant Hearts that affects this, in terms of like kind of getting credit for additional abilities.
Yeah.
And we do care a lot about the number of the sort of like ratio of ability to number of slots that it takes up, and making that as optimal as possible.
Yeah, that's right. We want to make sure that if you're going to play a Necromancer and you're going to summon skeletons, that you are going to be. I mean, that takes up that's the weight of an ability. Like it's the same as having an active. You need to like playing with it. It's going to take a little bit of space in your bar. You don't get that in addition to a bunch of other things.
But that's a mastery, though. Every other class gets their mastery on their own. Sorks have 2 enchantment slots. They don't take up abilities. Rogues have combo points. They don't take up an ability. Barbs have weapon mastery. They don't take up an ability. Druids have that Druid altar thing where you pick some bonuses. Doesn't take up an ability. It is Necromancer's mastery. It is not an ability. It's them being a Necromancer. So it should be passive just like everybody else's. And I'm not saying passive it shouldn't be passive like everyone else's. That's a dumb fucking thing. It should be not costing you something that it doesn't cost the other classes, I think. I think you need to add 2 keybinds specifically for Necromancers, or you need to allow them to be baked into something like Decrepify.
If you don't want to have skeletons on your bar right now, the idea would be to sacrifice a lot of those skills in order to give you that extra space. And in terms of the viability of like minion builds at various parts of the game, there are some builds that are able to like get pretty deep into content, obviously, but I think there's still room for improvement in terms of like minion survivability and other conversations along those lines. That is something that's still happening. And then there was the other conversation, the question about Druid companions, right?
Yeah, kind of similar to
yeah, but Druid companions for sure have to be on the bar because that's a skill. They have to be on the bar. Whether or not they're too weak is a different question, but they have to be on the bar.
Minions, and people were asking, like, can that ever be a viable thing?
Yeah, I think possibly. We see players. Actually, there are a few players that run like literally all 3 companion skills and use that as part of the build that they'll go after for their Druid. And I think that there's likely room here to do more with companion skills. Whether it rises to the full level of like a complete like spec, I think is going to be interesting. But I know that there's people who are very excited about trying to explore more of this side of the druid over time. But we don't have there aren't as many interconnecting points for the way that you interact with your companions right now, and the way that like the skeleton army does for the necromancer, in terms of ways that you modify them and do more with them. So I think there's some groundwork we need to do to like provide a lot more options there, but something that the team's interested in. Yeah.
I'm gonna do one last question here, which is, will there be better loot tables for like treasure goblins? Any alternate goblin types specifically for those?
Please, yeah, goblins are fun.
I think we loved how many, D3 has like all kinds of goblins. There's like 10 different kinds of goblins, or 14 maybe. It's been a little while since I looked at that data.
They're cool. They're fun.
In the editor. But we think that there's lots of room for there to be more fun goblin types in the future.
And in terms of the treasure goblins have a tendency to provide, we actually I had a conversation with the lead system designer last week talking about this. We are going to be buffing like legendary drop chance, for example, from items that will appear from treasure goblins. We do want them to be to feel a little bit more exciting when the moments they drop.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. Well, I know we talked about a lot today. I just want to recap some stuff that we had mentioned today. Obviously, we've been hearing a lot of feedback regarding the patch, and we're telling you guys now that we completely hear you loud and clear. We don't plan on doing patches like this ever again.
But this one's going to stay, and it's for the health of the game.
Removing the fun and the player power from players.
Oh, you've already done it.
And if we ever do that,
I'm being harsh.
For any type of class, like a build or whatnot, we'll make sure that there's always some really good alternatives for players to actually be able to try out a different build that will also be boosted way back up to kind of help out and give other options for players to actually kind of jump into. And we will ourselves do a better job of course, communicating back to the community. Again, what we're saying now is that we will be getting patch notes in front of the community way earlier in advance, whether through a Campfire chat or through like a blog of some sort or any type of communication.
Are you going to say anything more meaningful?
Get a better chance at looking at patch notes
beforehand. Or is it he is reiterating
any type of changes that might be coming down beforehand? Because I think communication was key here. I think you guys not seeing what we were planning on doing and us kind of giving that vision really affected a lot of the response from you guys. And I think if we just provided that over to everyone and gave a little bit more of a heads up, I think it would have helped a whole lot there from that specific situation.
Well, also keeping in mind, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's absolutely one part of it, and you were talking about it in a more full way, but I want to really make sure I hit on, like, one of the really great points of feedback that we've been seeing is like, why can you nerf things today and then buff things far in the future, right? And so what we're saying is, not only is there a change to communication, but we're also going to pair changes like that together so that we don't have exactly the situation that players have called out as.
I don't understand how it took this to realize that, but I'm happy you realized it. That completely. How can you not? Like, of course. How can you? If you nerf something, and people are like, "Why the fuck are you nerfing this?" It was happening. Oh, it's because we're buffing this. In season 2. Didn't do it in season 2.
That's unfair.
Yep, most definitely. And of course, with 1.1.1 coming really soon, we are committing to another Campfire chat next week, next Friday. Probably the same time. We'll confirm. More than likely, it'll be 11 a.m. next Friday. We'll end up posting about the details over the next week.
Man, I'm not home Friday.
Reminder to the community, and there we'll actually go through all the changes that we just talked about here into greater detail. Joe, I know, will end up providing greater detail changes on like the barbarian and sorcerer adjustments that we're going to be making based off of community feedback. And then, of course, we'll also be talking about just essentially everything in the patch notes for that. Patch 1.1.1 will be coming out in a couple weeks. With us having a stream next Friday, I anticipate it being very soon or shortly after the stream specifically. So, and again, we do have a hotfix today that we will be rolling out this afternoon. We'll be having notes related to that hotfix here really soon, and there's a lot of changes in there, including the Nightmare Dungeon changes that we talked about today. So, again, thank you guys for the feedback. We most definitely hear you loud and clear. You know, it's something that we wanted to address, and it's something very you know, important for the team here, for us to actually address the community and talk to you guys more about it, and also change some of the ways that we were doing specific items or specific processes. So we really do appreciate the feedback. Of course, continue providing feedback to us. It's really important for the game itself and for us to make a better experience for the players out there. So thank you guys again for tuning in. We'll see you next Friday for the next Campfire chat to talk about patch 1.1.1 and all the changes that are coming up. Really appreciate it.
All right. So that is it. Overall, really good, I guess. What, we get a stash staff. Oh, they're so gonna sell them. So we get a stash tab. I mean, take the win when you get it. And also they're gonna be more upfront with the changes. It still baffles me that they had to learn to make the buffs with the nerfs or whatever. It still baffles me that they have to make to have the experience nerfs happen at the same time as the density buffs comes in. It baffles me that they nerf vulnerability for a change they're making in the future so far that they can't even announce it yet. Like, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm being harsh, maybe I don't know how game design works, that maybe. So how did my prediction go? They did not say it's for the health of the game. They did not say any sentence for the health of the game. They did not even mention that it is for power creep in the seasons. However, that was the overall sentiment of it, and they definitely didn't walk it back. So I'll say I'm holding half an L for that one, because while I do think they said what I said they were gonna say, they did not say it in the manner at which I assumed they were gonna do it. So I will hold half an L for their attitude being so positive, and we have to give props where props are due. It seems like they listened. While they listened, they didn't conform, I guess. They do seem to have listened, and they do seem to have taken it into account at least. So I will hold half an L for it. Not taking the full L, because if you tell me that I should take the full L, I will. If you made it to the fucking comment, if you made it this far, one thing we learned is I should not have the option to pause these things, because then it takes way too long. If you made it this far, let me know down in the comment if I should hold my L for saying they were going to say, wait and see, we know what we're doing, and it's for the health of the game specifically. Or if I am correct in saying they kind of said that, just not as forcefully as I assumed. So I'll hold half of it on my own accord, and if you say I should hold the full one, I will do that. I do think they deserve some props for this. I'm looking forward to next Campfire chat. I'm hopeful, and this makes me want to level a sorcerer instead of a druid, actually, because sorcerers are cool, and they have some cool uniques that I'm hoping I can build around, but that's just not viable at the moment. And their season hearts are way cooler than the druids, and if they're getting buffed, maybe. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I'll see you in the next one, which is probably going to be me looking at the hotfixes if there's anything in them. But yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Hope I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.